before.
So this is going to be the best fatty acid supplement, right? So the cool thing is this replaces a ton of other supplements that you'd spend a bunch of money on, and it's actual food. That's the main difference. It's actual complex broth, okay?
So is it something they should get every day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This is the one thing. There's recommended on the carton. It's like
So much per.
yeah, it's like up to
5
20. It's like 2 ounces a day, and then it goes up from there. I make a lot of my own food just because it's like a science experiment for me.
Yeah.
But this is the one thing that I give
A
pretty,
lot.
if I can, every single day. But I use the milk differently. Some mornings I'm like, oh, you'll just get all milk for breakfast or whatever it might be. But so it's also really, really great for the thyroid because it supports the thyroid itself. So it's good for hypo and hyper because it supports the actual functioning of the thyroid. So
Wow.
that can be a really good advantage. It's also a digestive supplement, much like the milk. So it's a probiotic and a prebiotic because of the fact that it's fermented. So you have all that viable bacteria from all the fermentation, which keeps happening after you thaw it out. And the coolest, most miraculous part is it's the best kidney supplement, especially for animals that are in renal failure, because of the fact that animals need a high protein, high fat diet because they're carnivores, right? So when a healthy animal, oh, you're pretty tough, huh? when a healthy animal eats protein, it comes in a long peptide chain, okay? Their body processes it into a short peptide chain, which is free amino acid, which they can use. Then there's waste, which the kidney filters, pee it out, and you're good to go, right? So when the kidney stops working, there's waste there and can't be filtered, and that's what kills your animal.
Yeah.
Or they put them on a low-protein diet, which is terrible for carnivores. And, sorry, sometimes if I see some, I'm like, what? No.
Squirrel?
So, yeah, absolutely. And so, or you put them on a low-protein diet, and that's also terrible for carnivores. Now, the cool thing is when you make a stock like this, all those amino acids are processed into free amino acids. So they're in short peptide chains. So they're directly usable without any use from the kidney. So we've actually been able to extend the lives of animals that are in kidney failure because of this product in our testing of it. And the cool thing is, another thing happens, because this protein is so efficient, something happens called protein sparing, where the body can do all of its metabolic processes on 50% less protein. Because you talk about bioavailability of protein, this is very, very, very high. And so animals are on low kidney diets will require less protein to do the things that would be needed with a high protein diet. So if you know anyone that has an animal that has kidney failure or is
Hairball? I don't know.
threw up a little bit.
What you there?
Now it's eating it. Yuck, yuck.
That's what they do.
So if you know any animals that have kidney failure but my thing is I really want to
Sorry. Do you need me to remove her?
No, that's okay. I deal constantly, most of my job is dealing with animals with health issues. And so I always preach to do this soon, to do it when they're young. Because all of these properties I'm talking about can be put to preserving elimination organs. Right?
Yes.
And so that's what you want to do in terms of the fish stock. So the fish stock actually replaces about 6 supplements, but supplements are typically isolated nutrients that are removed from their food environment, so they're not nearly as effective. So this product has worked so well for people that they're starting to tell us things that we didn't anticipate happening. And the one that's freshest in my mind is I had a woman call me recently who said that she's just started using the fish stock with the kibble she was using, and she said the cataracts in her dog's eyes are clearing up.
Wow.
Which actually, and it makes sense from a scientific point. We just didn't anticipate it, so now we have to look into how that works.
I know someone
That
Right.
worked for people.
There is a people version. That's what I asked him.
Well, we actually, I can't legally recommend the raw milk because I could go to jail. But I can legally recommend the fish stock. We actually have a following for that in the
Why
human
can't
world.
you recommend raw milk?
Laws.
Yeah, the raw milk
Because
laws are
it's
very
not,
restrictive.
Pasteurization.
Yeah, the
FDA and all.
I can actually go to jail if I recommend it. So I have to be very. I have to be very.
It's not human grade.
Well, can you? Do you drink?
It's
you do
definitely
drink it?
human grade.
It's hard to find. I mean, because there's.
What did it say?
But you
I said
can't.
it's not human
you
grade.
can't-
He
That milk-
corrected me.
that
He goes,
milk
"It's
is
definitely human grade. It is
Oh.
not. It's not gone through the pasteurization or the stuff that they need to legally.
Oh,
go
got
through
it.
to
I know
make
what you
it.
mean.
That's what I'm. Yeah.
I-
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I misinterpreted what you said.
Milk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But in terms of quality, is what I was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't heat it. Like if you're trying to warm up your food because you forgot to unfreeze it and you just finger warm it, but you don't want to heat any of these things because it'll kill the
Yeah, you don't want to heat
enzymes.
them. The easiest, like if you have some milk thawed, the easiest way to thaw our food, if you need a quick thaw, is to that's me, to just put some milk in a bowl and then put the food in there, and that'll quick thaw it very quickly.
Okay.
You can also put it just in warm water. Sit it down. Is it in
Yeah,
a container?
yeah, but then yeah, you could do that too.
So it wouldn't hurt.
But
the
adding water
nutrients.
to it itself is okay.
Yeah, you could do that too. I mean, there's no exact. So if anyone is doing or in terms of when you're selling things and stuff like that, if anyone is, regardless of what the other diet they're doing, if they're doing milk and fish stock, they're going to be doing themselves a huge service. In terms of,
No matter if they're on raw, kibble,
Yeah.
freeze dry, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That's an.
because those two foods are so concentrated in what they do. I mean, there's nothing like it on the food market. I guarantee no other company will ever do fermented fish stock
Right.
because it's too hard to do. And the fermented fish stock is actually, there's a cool story about that too as well. So Irving, the goat farmer guy,
Okay.
so he married
Good.
he married Mary, who's the daughter of Steve.
Okay.
And so when he did that, he became the head of the family. So he moves into Steve's house and becomes the head of the family. And then they built a smaller house on the side of the property for Steve and his wife. And they make the fish stock there.
Aha.
So they actually make the fish stock on the farm as well.
Wow.
And they seal it on the farm and they freeze it on the farm. And that product is... And they actually built the stainless steel tanks to do it. They made the
Wow.
entire process. These
So
are like...
This is Amish.
Amish.
Yeah.
Amish.
Amish.
I didn't think they could use electricity.
They
Oh,
they can actually.
yeah.
Oddly enough, there's like different sects of them and stuff. But
Yeah.
so these ones use electricity for some things, but they are not connected to the grid. They use like a diesel generator.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So they use, because I mean that sealing machine is probably about as long as this room, and it's about $150,000, and it definitely uses electricity. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah, freezing.
yeah, and he has a big freezer, and stuff like that. But in terms of the
Sorry,
In-
the chairs are uncomfortable.
It's okay.
in terms of the fish stock and the milk, those are our two superfoods for a reason. And regardless of what you guys decide to do with diet, use those two products.
The way I
and
got
they're easy too.
introduced to it was I got Origins when I first got her. And I was wanting to change to raw, and they told me to buy the Answers goat milk so she wouldn't have diarrhea changing over.
Uh-huh.
And I was so glad because I never would have. And then it made me be able to know about it and then go to your lecture and change everything.
Yeah, it's
So is yours the one that's in a pint-sized frozen plastic container?
Yeah,
No.
Oh.
ours is in a cardboard container.
It's a cardboard, like it looks like
okay.
a little.
Looks like a pint of
Because
milk.
I
Yeah.
used her raw goat milk. I mean her.
Because we have a pint, we have a quart, and we have a half gallon. We don't use any plastic in the production of our food. Not only because it's good for the environment, but also when you freeze things in plastic, it degrades into the food. Anything you freeze in plastic degrades into the food. That is a scientific fact. So we're trying to minimize that. I mean, you fight your battles where you can,
I
you know?
know, yeah.
But we don't do that, and so all of our food, our raw food, it all comes in recyclable, compostable packaging, without any plastic in the
So
production.
even if it's
Meals?
PBA free or whatever?
Yes.
The seal of
Yes.
meals.
Yeah.
What?
So
All the seal meals, where you put the food in
Mm-hmm.
and you suck all the air out and then it seals. And then when it's frozen, it begins to take some of the plastic
Yep. It
components.
certainly degrades into it.
Well, son of a gun.
And
same with
you want to.
same with Ziploc bags.
And you want to know what's funny? My boss actually, her first job was at a frozen food company out of college, and her first job was, they said they made like microwavable bowls for, like, and they said, your first task is to find the bowl that leaches the least amount of plastic into the food. And she's like, how about one that leaches no plastic in
And
it?
they said that's not
Yeah,
possible.
There
it
is
doesn't
no
exist.
such thing.
So
Could you could probably put a piece of
Okay.
of
I need a-
parchment paper around and then stick it in plastic, right?
you could. I just recommend storing things in glass.
Now, can you thaw
easier.
it and put it in different containers and then refreeze it?
Our
Probably
food
the
or
milk?
the milk. There's no real need to because it lasts
Oh.
2 weeks in the fridge.
Oh,
Yeah, because
Okay.
it's fermented.
The
It
milk
lasts
does?
2. It actually is really about 30 days
but it
realistically.
goes sour, but that's okay. Sour is okay if it
Yeah,
go,
oh,
it's
After 2
counterintuitive, but it's
okay.
that just means the bacteria is doing more work and it's becoming more
Yeah.
healthy.
it is very.
Um,
I poured out half a
and
bunch
so-
one time.
We also make
What's going on? with
we
you?
make raw fermented pet food, dog and cat food. We make, in my opinion, and I think science's opinion, the best dog and cat food. So I'll go over both at the same time, and I'll just tell you
Okay.
the differences between the two because there are slight differences between dog and cat. So for our dog food, we have chicken, beef, and pork. And for our beef and our
Really?
pork dog food, we actually ferment it with kombucha.
With what?
Kombucha, which
Oh.
is fermented tea.
That's stuff you've been drinking?
Mhm. So we ferment our dog
Yes, I
food with
did.
kombucha, which is incredibly healthy.
I didn't think you should give dogs pork.
Yeah, that's actually just a myth.
Really?
Hmm
But because it's so fatty.
Well, not really. I mean, it is and it isn't. It depends on what
Oh.
cut. It depends on what cut you use.
Oh.
So when you eat a pork chop, or if you were to eat a pork chop and you were to eat a really fatty cut of beef, there'd be more fat in the beef. Okay. We actually formulate all our foods to be high fat, high protein, but they all have the same fat to protein ratio. So we just use specific cuts from each animal. So our chicken is the same fat to protein ratio as our pork.
And you don't use any lamb.
We don't. And actually, that's a good question. That kind of leads me into what the reason why we don't do lamb is because there's no farm in America that meets our sourcing standards.
Duck.
Oh. Yeah, duck.
No duck.
I know, but why? Same reason? Or they just haven't found one yet?
Well, I don't know. I just
I like
don't.
duck.
I don't know specifically, but I just don't know if because we're about to release turkey, and so there's just no.
Oh.
The thing about proteins is they're really just a slightly different
Yeah,
arrangement
yeah,
of amino
right.
acids, right? And so it's not a huge deal, but for most proteins that we don't do, we can't. Like for instance, we can't do rabbit because there's no farm that meets our standards in
I
terms
don't
of
want to
rabbit
do
farming,
rabbit anyway.
right? Plus, rabbit's not very good for dogs
Yeah.
anyway. At least not consistently because
Kids
it's
don't want to hear that their dogs are
No, I
eating
know.
bunnies.
well, it's way too low in fat. You have to really
Oh, it's interesting. It's too low in fat.
yeah. And so
There's not that much food on that poor animal.
so
Of course, they probably grind it.
yeah, exactly. So we do so all of our food, all of our dog and cat foods are 90% what the protein is. So that's 60% muscle, 30% organ, 10% bone. So we use a very high
Oh.
organ mix because most of the vitamins in our food
Do that again.
60% muscle, 30% organ, 10% bone.
How do you process the bone?
In
You grind it?
Yeah,
Okay, and they're
Yeah,
just so they're
we grind
eating.
it 3 times actually.
Oh,
Mhm.
and they get cartilage. You said. Too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay.
And so, in terms of the, so it's 90%, so we get the right calcium phosphorus ratio. We use a lot of organ meat because we get most of our vitamins and minerals from organs, and the next ingredient, which is whole raw eggs. So
whole raw.
yeah,
The
so,
whole thing?
Yep. So we use the entire egg, the
That's-
entire shell,
that's
everything.
That's another controversy going around about whether they should have the yolk and the.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is it shouldn't be a controversy because you're probably
Oh.
talking about the biotin deficiency. So what people say is that eating egg whites can cause a biotin deficiency because of a substance called avidin, which binds biotin, which is B vitamin. But what they're not really considering is that there is actually, because it's made to be food by nature again,
Uh-huh.
there's actually way more. There's more than enough biotin in the yolk itself to make up for that. In order for there to be a deficiency, an animal would have to eat only egg whites.
Oh, okay.
And so, our dog food is 2.5% whole whole raw eggs, and our cat food is 3.5%. And we use cow pasture raised eggs, which are the healthiest eggs you can possibly consume. They are
Do you use cow pasteurized eggs? Is that
cow
what you're saying?
pasture raised.
Oh, cow
So-
pasture! Yay!
So,
I was.
so the
Cow
farmer
pasture
brings the
raised-
cows in, they graze the field, and then they bring the chickens in to eat all the grubs out of the cow's poop, and they eat all the bugs in the grass that the
Oh,
cows haven't eaten.
gross!
And so,
Healthy.
because chickens are supposed to eat what?
Poop?
What are they supposed
No,
to
they're
eat?
eating the bugs.
Bugs
Oh,
They're
yeah.
eating
That's a
the
good question.
bugs
I
and
don't know.
grass.
Worms.
Bugs, grass, and worms, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
most of what a chicken's supposed to eat. Chickens are not supposed to eat what we feed them typically.
Ah.
A little bit of supplementation with the grain, but here's the difference.
Oh my goodness.
So we've taken all these foods, like eggs, and we've ruined them by feeding them the wrong things. When you have a conventionally raised chicken, and you look on a carton and it says 100 milligrams of omega-3s on it, that's not an impressive stat, and I don't know why they do that, because in a pasture-raised egg, there's like 400 to 500 milligrams of omega-3s in there. Because when you feed the animal the wrong thing, all the ratios of nutrients and fats get messed up. For instance, if you go to the store and buy conventionally raised eggs, there's no
Yeah.
vitamin C in them. There's a lot of vitamin C in pasture-raised eggs because they're eating what they're supposed to eat. So
What about those high omega eggs that they cage
So
free
those
high
eat like flaxseed and some other ingredients. Those are actually better from a nutritional standpoint, but they still just don't do, because it's not just the omega-3s. When you look at pasture-raised eggs, they have like 4 times the amount of every vitamin, in some cases a lot more than
Wow.
that. And so if you were to buy a similar quality egg that we use in our food from Whole Foods, it's $9.83 a dozen. So
Oh.
that's...
That was just under $9 at
Mhm.
Fred Meyer. I was looking at eggs yesterday.
Well, I wonder what they have there. It's kind of
And
interesting.
do
I mean,
you
that's
use
probably-
the shell?
We do.
Yeah.
We put the entire egg in.
I know I have. I mean, one of your
This is actually, I have a picture of what
audiences
it looks like for
should be people that do agility, because I do agility, and there's tons of agility people that do raw. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that they do raw correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people that I know in the agility world, they just give the dog the whole egg.
Oh yeah, this is the pre. That's our beef in the mixer.
Isn't that pretty?
I know that looks like a pickle, but it's a green squash. We don't just put random pickles into our. So that's the
wow.
pre-mixed product.
Awesome.
Wow.
We have a. So what makes our food complete is mostly the meat and the eggs, but then we go on to add. It's 6 to 8% depending on the dog variety, and 1% in the cat food. We add vegetation to it. It's all
good.
there's no starch ingredients. It's all our actual carbohydrate content for our dog food is 1%. In our cat food, it's even less. The only vegetation we add to our cat food is carrots, and that's only for insoluble fiber, because cats don't really derive any nutrition from plants. And so, does anyone know who Karen Becker is?
No.
I tried to drop a name and nobody.
Sorry.
No, I'm just. No, she's
Give us a
she's a
hint.
very famous veterinarian, and she's the one who convinced us to put the carrots into it, apparently.
So, there are vets out there that actually care about nutrition. That's good to know.
Yes, there are some.
There are some, but
We work
boy,
with a
Instead
very
of no
I
science
argue
diet.
with my vet every single time I go.
we work with a very great vet named Dr. Doug, who also does things like I'm doing now, and
They just don't like raw. They do.
How
They
not.
do
can
not.
you convince a vet
You can't.
to quit selling the food that they
I
sell?
know.
Yeah.
I took my dog
Oh
off
my
of
gosh.
potato and duck from the vet.
Yeah.
Was it Royal Canin? Is
Yep.
that where?
Yep.
That's what she
And
grew
after
up
4
on.
months, his coat was shiny.
Mhm.
He was no longer licking it to the point where it turned brown from the yeast growing on it. His ears weren't infected anymore.
It's amazing.
But he was on a health food for about 5 years from this vet, and he didn't get any better.
yeah, and it actually, I mean, it makes sense because there's always like a money aspect to it as well in terms
Right.
of what they're doing. But the problem is, they need to do